finish is she shows us some amazing cards with die cuts and hot foiling. Don't forget to watch out for the freebie that she shares in her video. And now a word from our sponsor, Colorado Craft Company.
Hi, this is Daniel West for Colorado Craft Company. Welcome to the Cardmaker Success Summit. We're known for the Anita Jerem line of stamps as well as
So these are the cards that we're going to be making in today's lesson. And we're going to be using two different types of foil. These are toner foils, and there are many different companies that make toner foils. These ones are from Crafty Critter, and the other ones here are actually hot foils. They are made by many different companies as well, but they need to be used with a hot foil machine. Now, the difference between these is the way that you use them. The toner foils actually have like an adhesive coat on them, and typically you need to have something for that to adhere to. And a great product that I'm going to be showing you today that works really well is this is toner sheets. So basically, if you've got a laser printer and you print it out in high quality black, then a toner foil will adhere to it. But this is a cheats way of doing it. These are pre-printed. So I'm going to show you how to use that as well today. So I thought I'd start with a couple of different ways where you don't need any machinery at all. I know that I said the toner foil needs something to adhere to. It doesn't have to be laser print, and all of us have adhesive of some sort. So I'm starting with a piece of white cardstock. This is just normal cardstock, and I'm adhering some adhesive tape. Now I chose to use a 1-inch wide tape here, and you could use whatever size you want. I have used this tape previously to make foiled stripes on a project, and that looks pretty cool too. All you need to do is remove the release paper from the tape itself and then burnish the foil on top. Now you do need to have the pretty side of the foil facing towards yourself or facing up, and I just like to use my finger to burnish it on. You can also use like a flat tool, like a bone folder or something like that, but I find my finger always gives a nice even result. Now what I want to do here is create a snowbank. And one of the sets that I'll be focusing on today using is the Concord and Ninth. It's the Home for the Holidays Stacks die. And this is a really fun little set. So it has a lot of different houses and scene creating elements in it. Now I did die cut this piece twice because to create my snowbank I used the wavy die and then I die cut it from the circle because I'm going to sit this at the base of this circle for my snowbank. The other type of glue that I'm sure you already have in your stash is a glue pen. Now I have a Quickie glue pen. It makes a really fine glue line or dot, which is what I'm doing here. I'm going to be making some snow on this little circle. So I'm literally just dotting the glue all over this piece. Once the glue's dry, I'm doing exactly the same thing again. I'm burnishing it with my finger. Pretty side of the foil is facing up. And you can also run this through your die cutting machine to add the foil with a bit of pressure. I prefer just to use my finger, but that's another option, especially if you're doing larger areas. How pretty is that? There are other ways to use your foil, your toner foil, without any extra machines. There's products that you can use like the Duo transfer gel, and I'll have all the ideas that I've used in the past, lots of tips and tricks, and that will all be in my freebie, which is my foiling secrets, and you can download that using this link. And also if you want to know the sandwiches that I'm using in today's projects, I'll also have all of those written there as well. I have some of the toner sheets here, and this is where I want to add some foiling elements to my little houses that I've been die cutting from the Home for the Holidays Stacks die set. So I'm literally going to die cut these the same as I have been for the houses, and then add the foil to those pieces. Another way that you can do this is if you have the adhesive sheets or even just some wide adhesive tape, you can create your own coloured foiled cardstock like I did for the snowbank, and then die cut the pieces out. And that just gives you another option. I just find I get such a good result with these toner sheets, and I can die cut and also foil them in any colour that I want. Now, you can also do this with things like sentiments or create foiled borders, anything, foiled stripes, dots, anything to suit your project. I'm going to add the foil now. Because I'm using toner sheets, I do need to use some heat and pressure to add the foil. I've got my Mink machine set to setting 3. You can also use a laminator for this purpose and get the same result. If you've got a good laminator, I've heard some of them are fantastic. I did have a cheap laminator and didn't have extremely good results with mine, but that could have been a bit of user error at the time. I'm not sure, but anyway, I managed to get my hands on a Mink machine and I haven't looked back. I really get much more consistent results with my foiling, and it definitely is a lot sturdier and more durable, and definitely gets hotter than my laminator ever did. So I'm sure that's going to help. Just cutting away the foil. I've got a rotary cutter that I use to cut my foil. You can use a pair of scissors to do that. I have my carrier sheet here, which is from Heidi Swap. I've just taken one of the 12 by 12 sheets and cut it in half. You could also use a piece of copy paper or some parchment paper. Just don't use anything that's too thick. If it's a cardstock, it won't allow the heat to get through so well. I have a piece of scrap cardstock on the back, and the sandwich that I'm using today has the die cut toner sheets with the black side facing up, or the laser printed side facing up, and the foiled sheets with the pretty side facing up. I'm going to do all this in one pass just to make it easy. I have added another shim of cardstock on top, but really you don't need to do this. That's probably more habit than anything for me. And I find that setting 3 works really well with these toner sheets. And when I'm feeding it through the Mink laminator, always feed it in with the folded side first. You may or may not have a high and low setting on your laminator, but if you do, I would recommend using it on a high. Now, it does take a little while for it to go through, and after it has gone through, I always like to allow a few seconds for the actual cardstock to cool down before I separate the pieces from the foil. I always keep my foil in its packaging, and to be honest, that's one of the best things that you can do because it stops dust from getting on it, and dust is your enemy when it comes to foiling, because wherever there is dust or cat fur or anything on your projects, then the foil won't be able to adhere, and it just makes you cry. It's not good. So what I do is, by keeping it separate and inside the packaging, I try and keep my desk area as clean as I can when I know I'm going to be foiling. And that just makes it much easier in the long run. I don't have to come back and do it again. I've chosen a few different foils today, and if you click on the worksheet that's attached to this lesson, you'll be able to see exactly what I've used today. They will be all linked there. This is the Crafty Critter foil, which is a toner foil, but there are many other brands. I just liked the variations that these patterns gave to these elements on my card because it gives that almost an iridescent sort of shiny finish, which is what I love about foiling the best. Except for when it comes to photographing. I don't like photographing foiling, it's so difficult to do. Okay, so I have already die cut the house faces. They were out of, I used some, you could just use any sort of pink or blue, any other colours that you have. Mine was called Aqua Sky from Concord and Ninth, and I also use Blush, which is an Alta New cardstock. When I'm adhering the foil together, I like to either use a dotted adhesive or a glue pen. One thing to be wary of is when you're using glues, try not to get it on your fingers and actually touch the foil because it will dull it. And if that happens, I do sometimes come back in with one of those gum erasers and that can help, or just kind of wipe it gently with my finger once it's dried. Worst case scenario is I re-die cut it, I refoil it and I stick it over top. Pro tip there, how to fix a foiled mistake. Tweezers are your friend here as well because they will help keep your fingers from getting too sticky. Now all of these houses did get popped up onto the cards, and I did decide to come in with a little bit of vellum and add that behind all the windows. I just cut a thin strip of vellum and used the dotted adhesive to do that. You could easily add a foiling behind the windows too. That would look really cool, or even a different colour, or nothing. You could just leave it as a empty space. It's up to you. So far we've been focusing on using toner foil techniques with and without a laminator, but it's time to hot things up now with a little bit of hot foiling. All right, so there is a learning curve when it comes to hot foiling, I know, but the results are so worth it. There are many different brands on the market of foil, and there's a few different brands of machines as well. I've got the Gemini Foil Press, but that's because I have a Gemini Junior die cutting machine, and these were made to work together. So if I was going to use Gemini foil today, I would be running it at a low heat. But because I'm using other brands of foil, I know that they take a higher heat to work with the foil press. So I've put my heat temperature on medium, and I'm going to be setting my timer for 15 seconds. All of these can be adjusted depending on your cardstock, depending on the brand of foil, depending on the length of time that you need. It just is a matter of learning what you've got and playing with it. I'm using Hammermill cardstock today, which does work particularly well with foiling, but I've also had great success with Neenah cardstock and some smooth coloured cardstocks as well. So it really is a matter of playing. Now I'm going to start by actually hot foiling a sentiment, and this is from the Spellbinders Mini Christmas Sentiment Strips set, and I'm going to be doing this directly onto my card. Now I've got a piece of cardstock here that is actually bigger than what I need, and you'll see why I do that in just a moment. The two sentiments that I want to hot foil, I'm just laying them directly onto the hot foil plate. I have cut a piece of foil, and this time I want the pretty side facing the pretty side. So I've got the sentiment with the letters facing up, and then the pretty side of the foil hitting the actual sentiment letters. And then I lay my cardstock on top of that and the top plate of my machine. I did wait for my machine to heat up, and it actually beeps. It tells me when it's ready, and then I can push the timer. I'll wait for that 15 seconds. And once that's beeped again, I can just remove that and pass that through my die cutting machine. And that's going to allow the heat and the pressure to work together to attach the foil to my cardstock. Now, there really shouldn't be any great indentations in your cardstock. And if there is, you may have too many shims on your sandwich, and it is, I have Sometimes I will add one, sometimes I'll add 2 shims. Just depends on what cardstock and what foil I'm using. And it's just beautiful when it turns out perfectly. All right, so this is a different style of foil. It is a Go Presson foil, pearl foil, which is an iridescent flakes mirror finish kind of foil, but it's actually see-through. So it can be a little bit hard to work out which is the correct side. So I usually just write onto it, which is the top, just with a permanent marker, like I'll write a T-O-P, and then I'll know that's the actual side I need. That's the pretty side I need to face towards my hot foil plate. And because it's a clear foil, I can actually layer my foils. This is the Snowflake. It's a hot foil stamp, hot foil die, hot foil plate. There's lots of different things that these are called. You do not have to have hot foil plates, stamps, dies to use your hot foil machine. I'm going to show you how in a moment, but there are some amazing ones out there and well worth the investment, especially to get such a beautiful look as I did with this one. Now, this would work beautifully on a coloured cardstock as well. I did wait for it to cool down before I removed the actual top layer of the foil, and I did come in and add a second snowflake to the top portion of the card. How pretty is that? That is such a nice way to add foil and a real subtle look. And this is why I wasn't too worried where I put my sentiment in the first place, because I knew I was going to come back and die cut a rectangle using the A2 rectangle layers, Dwarful Flower Crafts set of nesting rectangles, but you could simply cut that down with a piece, with your paper trimmery as well. So now we're on to the second way to add hot foil. This time I have the Pink Fresh Studio solid hot foil plate, and I want to hot foil and create my own foiled cardstock. This time I have added a couple of shims as well. I waited for the plate to heat up. I put the plate on there before it heated up. My sandwich was the hot foil plate with the foil with the pretty side facing towards the plate and the cardstock, and then the 2 shims. One thing of note is that you do need to remove the plastic protective layer to reveal the foil cardstock. This is the exact same way that you would also use any of your leftover pieces of hot foil, so that nothing can go to waste. And that's just giving me some beautiful cardstock to make some snow for my houses, which I will attach. Now, this is my cut down panel. I've added some foam to the back of it, just some fun foam. And I'm using some score tape here, and I'm releasing 2 opposite corners and adding it to the front of my top fold A2 card before I add a little bit of pressure to the corners where I had released the adhesive. And that just holds it in place while I remove the extra bits of release paper. Now pop up this is the circle that I made earlier with the snowbank and the snowflakes with the silver foil. Way back when we did the toner foiling at the beginning. And these are the snow caps that I'm adding to the trees and the snow highlights that I'm adding to the house. I just use some either Zig chisel pen or dotted adhesive to do that. I did, like I say, pop up the house on the front of that as well, just to add a bit more dimension. If you're not a fan of dimension and you'd rather have something that's going to post a little bit easier, then just adhere all these layers directly to the card base. And that will make it much easier and cheaper to post. All right, so this is the final way we're going to be adding hot foil, and this is a regular cover die. This die is made to make a patterned impression on a piece of cardstock. It's called Twirling Flurries. It's from Alan Hudson. And I'm just popping it on my plate now just to warm it up a little bit and get it ready. that you do not have to have hot foil dies, plates, stamps to use the hot foil machine. I could easily use these snowflake dies and create my own background. They're obviously not going to be the solid snowflake that I had on the other panel that was intended to use as a hot foil, but it will give a lovely snowflake edge wherever I put it. And I could actually put those snowflakes all over a piece of cardstock and get a gorgeous look using regular dies. All right, my sandwich here is the same. I am just adding my matte silver foil with the pretty side facing the pretty side of the cover die. And then there's my cardstock. And I did come in with the shim and then the plate. I have it on setting 2, the medium heat setting, because this foil, like I said, it's not the Gemini foil. And I cooked it for 15 seconds before I popped it into my Gemini die cutting machine, which I do have on a turntable here, which makes it so much easier to use. Same thing again, I did wait until it cooled down before I revealed the hot foil pattern. But the release paper, the rubbish piece of paper, that other piece, I can actually use that with my solid hot foil plate to create a silver pattern background. So don't throw them away. I'll have a video linked in my freebie that will show you how to use that. So please don't throw them away. And if you get my freebie, you'll see what I mean. So I just used a Tombow mono eraser there. There was a little bit of overfoiling and that was really easy to remove. This is the die that coordinates from the sentiment set, and it has one die for the whole set that cuts out each of the sentiment strips. So basically you can cut each sentiment bespoke to fit the actual sentiment. It's a brilliant idea. And I did actually add a little scrap piece of paper behind that. So, because I want to pop the sentiment up, I didn't show you that here, just to give it a little bit more stability. We have touched on so many different ways to use foiling today, starting with some really simple ones using some double-sided tape and a glue pen. Next, we got out the laminator to add some heat and pressure, and also used some fabulous toner sheets to add some fun elements to our houses. Then we brought out the big guns with the hot foil machine and did some regular hot foiling, as well as created our own cardstock, and also used normal dies to create a hot foiled background. So there are lots of different ways to add foil to projects. And if you've never tried it before, I would recommend perhaps getting just some simple toner foil, maybe it's silver or gold, and maybe something with a bit of a fleck or some iridescence in it, and just have a play. Use your adhesives and see if you like it on your projects. You never know, you might just get hooked like I have.